بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, and peace and prayers be upon all of the prophets of God and upon our Prophet Muhammad.
تعرض الفتن على القلوب كالحصير. Now I want to interpret this hadith. Hasir is a mattress, or a mat. It's a matrix. It's like this. It has vertical and horizontal, and it's a mat. And the Prophet said that the fitan will be shown to the hearts like a mat. Udan. The oud is like one of the, it has two lines, a horizontal and vertical line. This is the TV set. It's a hasir, it's a mat. And the Prophet said, the fitan will be shown to the hearts like a mat. This is my interpretation, but the al-lugha tahtamiluha. The Arabic language bears this meaning, and that's why I believe it's a valid interpretation. This is the oud, the idan of the television. And this is how shaitan is destroying the hearts, by showing them the fitan on these films and on TV over and over again until people just become accustomed to violence. It's a normal thing. They're not shocked by it anymore. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صنفان من أهل النار لم أرهما قوم معهم سياط كأذناب البقر. You will see people with whips like cow tails. يضربون بها الناس. They'll hit people with it. وَنِسَاءٌ كَاسِيَاتٌ عَارِيَاتٌ. Women that were clothed and naked at the same time. مَائِلَات. They'll sway in their walk. مُمِيلَات. And cause others to incline towards them.
And the problems start where the clothes start, with the fabrics the clothes are made from. Polyester, nylon, spandex use almost 342 million barrels of oil a year. Yeah, Lululemon yoga pants, they're made from oil.
Now the sad thing about it is, now we've got Khadijas and Fatimas imitating. And the Prophet ﷺ said the characteristic of my deen, لِكُلِّ دِينٍ خُلُقٍ وَخُلُقَ الْإِسْلَامَ الْحَيَاةِ. Every deen has a characteristic, and the characteristic of my deen is modesty. If you do not have modesty, then you don't have a portion of the Prophet ﷺ's deen. So a woman who loses that, it means that she lost modesty. It's a sign. It's not, the fact that she is dressed like that is not what takes her to the hellfire. That is only a sign of what takes her to the hellfire. What takes her to the hellfire is a loss of iman that has resulted in the manifestation of the sign. So that is a sign for people. And that's why our women have to wake up. They have to wake up. Really, the women have to wake up and recognize that if they are kasiyatun ariyat, ma'ilat mumilat, then they're manifesting a sign. And the Prophet ﷺ said, La yajidanna ra'ihat al-jannah. These women won't find the scent of paradise. وَإِنَّ رَائِحَتَهَا لِمَسِيرَةِ 500 عَامٍ. And its scent continues for 500 years.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. The matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
If you look in a study they did in a survey, that the average worker, like service worker in this country, watches 30 hours of television a week. Children, they say 40 to 60 hours of television a week, a full-time job, watching nonsense. This is what they're doing. When you go to the managers of these people, they watch 20 hours a week. When you go to the heads of the people over the managers, the overseers, then you get like 10 hours a week. When you get to the CEOs, they watch 2 to 3 hours of television a week. 50% of that material is material related to the work that they're doing. So the movers and shakers in this world are not sitting around watching television. They're utilizing their lives for shar, for evil. And they're spreading their fasad all over the world, but they're busy at it. And the Muslims are asleep, and because we have gone to sleep, they have taken over. Because we have gone to sleep, they have taken over. And that's why we find ourselves in the horrific condition we find ourselves in. And until the Muslims wake up, it's just going to, one nightmare to another. We're just going to be in one nightmare to another. That's all it is. They're just nightmares because we're asleep. And when we wake up, then we can enter into the light of day. And Islam is a deen about waking up. That's what it is. Religion is supposed to wake people up. Islam is not an opiate. There are other religions that fulfill that function. In fact, they got rid of religion and now they just spread opium, quite literally. The same people that used to control the state, that controlled religion to maintain the masses, to do what they want them to do, when they got rid of religion, when they found it was no longer useful, now they literally spread drugs. You can see this. The CIA in this country is directly involved and engaged in drug dealing, bringing in cocaine, putting it into the inner cities in this country. In Liverpool, in England, in Liverpool, this is not a joke, I'm not making this stuff up. You can go buy this in mainstream bookstores and read this stuff of people within these organizations that admit this. They'll even admit this on 60 Minutes. I mean, this is not a joke, this is reality, people. There are people that want to keep you asleep. If they don't use the drugs of white powder, they'll use the drug of television, they'll use the drug of their mass media, they'll use all these drugs, but they're going to keep you asleep because they fear the day that you wake up. That's what they fear. And you should be very well aware of that. And we're not people of play. We're not people of play. Qur'an says that Allah didn't create this world as a play and a pastime. La'iban wa lahwa. It's not for playing and pastime. It's not for sports. I mean, wallahi, you're men. You're not children. You're men. Don't waste your time watching sports on the CNN or whatever you watch it on. Get up and do something with your lives. Become serious people of depth and understanding. And they'll just keep giving it to you. They'll give it to you. They'll give you football, and then they'll give you baseball, and then they'll give you basketball. Keep churning out the songs for you, one after another. They'll bring the new pop stars. They'll bring the new actresses with the beautiful faces. They'll bring the new designs, the latest fashion, the latest fad. They'll just keep doing it for you. They'll keep churning it out as long as you keep eating it up and buying it. The day that you turn it off is the day that you have overcome them. That is the day that we have had victory. The day that we say we turn it off, we turn all this rubbish off, that's the day that we have victory. But until that day comes, we're just going to go from one nightmare to another. As an ummah, we need to rise up to the level of this deen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم السلام عليكم.
The question here is, a lot of experts in AI don't share the same level of concern that you do about the dangers of AI.
Fools.
What
Famous last words.
What specifically do you believe that they don't?
Well, maybe we're in a simulation right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Sometimes it feels like that.
Okay, now this guy who was at Cal Poly Tech, right? This guy, Jack Parsons, was openly a devil worshiper. He developed the fuel that enabled us to penetrate the stratosphere. Satellites could not have come about without this guy. In his diary that he himself wrote, he had a dream. This is 1948. He had a dream where he saw somebody that he calls Belial Dajjal. And he tells him, you are helping me. Okay, I'm not making this up. You think I'm making this up? Wallahi, I'm not making this up. You go look it up yourself. Okay, so where's all this stuff coming from? Seriously, where's it all coming from? We're in the age of the Dajjal, you know. It's just Allahu Alam, when and where and what, but this is it, people. As far as I'm concerned, it's end game. That's why Allahu Akbar, water and prayer and Qibla, can't take that away from us. Allah says, don't follow the خطوات الشيطان ومن يتبع خطوات الشيطان فإنه يأمر بالفحشاء. He's commanding you to do foul things, والمنكر, and things that are naturally rejected by fitrah. Your fitrah rejects them. ولولا فضل الله عليكم ورحمته ما زكى منكم من أحد أبدا. And had it not been for Allah's grace and His mercy, none of you would have been purified. Because the purpose of your life on earth is tazkiyah. If you follow shaitan, he will corrupt your heart. By rejecting shaitan, you're purifying your heart. And this is tazkiyah. And this is our religion. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. On that day, nothing will avail the human being. No benefit except the one that comes with a pure heart, with a sound heart, with a wholesome heart. All of the research that we have indicates that media violence has increased in quantity, but it's also more graphic, more sexual, and more sadistic. This is the khutawat al-shaitan. If you watch films from the 1940s, the 1930s, the 1950s, you can see it's slow. This is how shaitan gets people. يَسْتَدْرِجُهُمْ. He pulls them step by step. These are his khutawat. And shaitan wants violence and sex are his two, because they're very powerful for the human psyche. And these are the two ways that he can really corrupt the heart. 80% of R-rated movies, right? 70% of restricted video games, and 100% of music with explicit content, warning labels, were being marketed to children under 17. So they know what they're doing. These are the minions of shaitan, whether they're conscious of it or not. وَلَكِنَّهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. They're unconscious. If you say, لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. We believe in freedom of speech. We believe in artistic expression. We're not sowing corruption. No, they're the corruptors. أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ. But they're unaware. So many of them are literally minions. By the time the average child in the United States is 18 years old, they will have seen 200,000 acts of violence and 16,000 murders. What do you think this is doing to the psyche? Why do you think America is such a violent country? Seriously, there are other reasons. This is one of the reasons. We have a history of violence in the United States. But our children have been programmed to be violent. Media violence is especially damaging to young children under 8 because they cannot easily tell the difference between real life and fantasy. The American Pediatric Association warns that children should not see any television now. This is a protocol from a few years back. They shouldn't see any television before the age of 3 because of the effects they know that it has. That was actually a compromise because the evidence shows that they really shouldn't be seeing any television while their brains are developing. But these are compromises because the television industry is so powerful. And if you don't think industry has an effect on medicine, just look at the food pyramid. Because the food pyramid in the United States was changed because of the dairy and meat lobbies. Because they warned people about dairy and meat. So they got it changed. So industry, medicine is in service of industry. It's not medicine in service of humanity. It serves industry. They know Scientific America proved that television is a low-grade addiction. People become addicted to television.
The owners, forget these foolish elections, the owners of this country don't care about the poor in general.
The owners of this country, what are we going...
Is this Karl Marx talking to me? The owners of this country are the voters of this country.
You're wrong about that, my friend.
Aren't the owners of this country the voters in this country who elected George Bush?
No, they're not. Listen, politics, these elections are a charade. It is a charade.
Oh, okay.
It is, they are meant to... Well, I'll tell you, listen, just listen for a minute. Learn a little something. The elections and politicians are in place in order to give Americans the illusion that they have freedom of choice. You don't really have choice in this country.
This is one of the most destructive aspects that Shaitan now has. This destroys families. It destroys your heart. It will put out your inner eye. You will not be able to have any spiritual experiences. Your heart will become like that mujakhiyan, what the Prophet ﷺ said, a vessel that can't carry any good. إِلَّا مَا أُشْهِرِبَ مِنْ هَوَاهُ. Because this is all hawa. And porne in Greek means prostitute. One of the tribulations is the faces of prostitutes. People, that Allah, there are people that are punished by giving them the tribulation of looking at the faces of prostitutes. And this is basically, anybody who's in these films is a prostitute. Male or female, they're selling their bodies. Look at the stats, people. Look at the Muslim countries. This is the searches per capita. Look what's happening to us. And then you're wondering why we're being, why this punishment is coming down on us. What's happening to our people? How has Shaitan been able to do this? Because we forgot. We left all the protection. We left the awrad. We left the wird of the Qur'an. The ahraz that the Prophet gave us to say every morning and evening. We're supposed to say these things. There's evil in the world. You're supposed to seek protection from it. We're supposed to protect ourselves, guard our hearts. This thing is a precious thing. It was created to know Allah. It wasn't created for these things. And Islam is a pure religion. The Muslims that migrated out of India called it Pakistan. The land of purity. Muslims are supposed to be pak. They're supposed to be tayyib. The Prophet said, at-tayyibun lit-tayyibat. This will corrupt the heart. It will make it aswad mirbad. Black. Internet websites, 4.2 million. 12% of total websites. Pornographic pages, 372 million. These are sound stats. Daily pornographic search engine requests 68 million. Some of these women are in sexual slavery. We know that in sexual slavery there have been pornographic materials found in these busts of people that are sex trafficking. And this again is the optimization of profit. It's a lot cheaper to use a sexual slave in the production of pornographic films. So we have to look at immoral capitalism. Food, junk food now, they know, they have proven. Junk food is addictive, and the more junk food you eat, the less inclined you are to eat healthy food. Any restaurant that you recognize the name, don't eat there. This food is made in factories by chemists to get you addicted. They use rats and they see how much sugar and fat they need to put in. Just like tobacco. People get addicted to it. They can't stop. Allah always says with halal, tayyib. Always. Now we know the meaning of that. Because at the time of the Prophet, the food was pure. They interpreted it to be economic. To not buy it with haram money. But now we understand another dimension of it. And zaman yufassir al-Qur'an, like Ibn Umar said. Time is what interprets the Qur'an.
Choice. The problem is choice.
You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. These people went to the same universities and fraternities. They're on the same boards of directors. They're in the same country clubs. They have like interests. They don't need to call a meeting. They know what's good for them, and they're getting it. And there used to be 7 oil companies. There are now 3. It will soon be 2. The things that matter in this country have been reduced in choice. There are 2 political parties. There are a handful of insurance companies. There are about 6 or 7 information things. But if you want a bagel, there are 23 flavors because you have the illusion. You have the illusion of choice. Right. You don't get the real important choice. There's no freedom of choice.
That's a great point. You have so much children's violence. This is a cartoon for children.
but pain. The pain is in the mind.
Every single Disney film has a dead mother or a mother who dies in the film. Why do they do that? It's traumatic. They know what they're doing. Disney is an evil empire. This is not a joke. Disney is an evil empire. And why does Disney spread this global message out to turn little girls into princesses? We don't want, all you need is one princess in a country. You don't want a lot of princesses in a country. You want women that will serve, that will work, that will do things. They don't expect everybody to do it for them. But the Disney princess is served. And all the children are little warriors. So they have this violent attitude in their film. I mean, look at this. It's just unbelievable. Look at this industry. He takes you by steps. I mean, look, you're looking, this is 2008. It was almost $12 billion. It's a lot of power. When you have that kind of money, you can buy judges, you can lobby people, you can do immense things. This is the world that we live in now that's been created. Just watch this scene. This is a game. This is a game that people play. See, I mean, don't let your kids
Parents
watch
are going
this.
to buy children games like this. This is real. Kids underage play many games like this because when parents go to buy games, they don't check the age ratings. So this Christmas, when you go to buy a new Xbox game, check the age rating.
Yeah, that's to me a lousy message. Don't go buy it. That's the real message. Don't buy it. Look at the physical fight. Gamers, 40% of females have been in a physical fight in America, 51% of males. Look at the non-gamers, 14% as opposed to 28%. And they'll say, oh, but you can't prove any correlation, right? You can't prove it. You don't need a rocket scientist to just know the obvious. It's like the study they did in America to find out why pizzas burn people, the roof of their mouth, and then they found it's because the cheese covers the heat on the tomato sauce, right? After spending a lot of money to work that out. I mean, this is the kind of stupidity that, right? Poor grades. Females, almost 40%, 35% of the males, as opposed to 20% and 23%. No relationship, though, no correlation, can't prove it. Damaged property, 15% of the gamers, 23%. This is people going out and damaging property. In other words, delinquency. 5% of females, 10% of males, which is still high, I think. 89% of top-selling video games contain violent content. Half of it is of a serious nature. Highly criticized video game Grand Theft Auto, which was actually developed by some criminals. They were real criminals, drug dealers. They came up with this idea. You get points by killing policemen. And then they wonder why all these, violence towards police. Right? And then the police react. It's a two-way street in America. If you notice in a lot of these situations, they completely disregard the police. They don't do what they tell them. They say, get on the ground. They don't get on the ground. It's a major problem. And the police use excessive force, especially against African Americans. It's a horrific situation that we have in the United States against poor people. These police forces, and now they're giving them commando equipment. They look like they just got off the desert war, right? They have tanks in small towns in America. Shaitan gets you little by little, step by step. We used to have policemen that didn't carry guns in the United States. England used to have policemen, they didn't carry guns. They called them bobbies. You asked them a question. Right? Now they have Uzis or whatever they're using. They don't use Uzi. I don't know what their gun is, what their weapon of mass destruction of choice is in England.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
This can't
be. Be what? Be real?
A lot of the people involved in mass control are actually heavily involved in this science. And that's what you find out when you do the research. Many of the people that are involved in film, many of the people involved in music, many of the people that are involved in newscasting, they know how to manipulate the minds of people. And whether it's done with this type of magic or simply with the power of technology and the higher magic, the result is the same. You get people that are as if they're possessed. And this is why it would be indistinguishable. You know, we've got kids that are stabbing children. We've got people that are just shooting people and not knowing why they're doing these things. And this is coming out of a culture that is really, really profoundly disturbed in its essence, because no civilization that was healthy would produce the type of games that they're exposing these young children to. No civilization that was healthy would produce the type of films, where they have films where the main character tortures people and chops off their fingers and their hands, or slowly tortures them to death. They wouldn't, Muslims would have never come up with these type of ideas, because their culture is not a, it's not a demonic, dark culture. It's become demonic and dark because of a lot of madness that's happened in the Muslim world. I mean, there's a lot of demonic, dark things going on, and these people are really, Dostoevsky called his book about the terrorists the possessed, and in one translation it's called the demons. I don't know the Russian word for it, but he certainly understood that there was something demonic involved in this. So that's, you know, it's difficult for people to deal with this stuff, but when you actually find out about the characters that were involved in producing a lot of this technology, and you read the history of it, you find that they were really involved in a lot of these things, which is very strange. And when you see the result that these things have on people and the effect that they have on them. So, I mean, I don't know, Arthur C. Clarke, who said that advanced technology becomes indistinguishable from magic, was involved in magic. He was involved in numerology. I certainly wasn't raised with the idea, like magic was something, you know, I thought magic was pulling rabbits out of hats and things like that. When I became Muslim and I heard all these things, and, you know, I didn't really, whatever, you know, it wasn't really something. But in the last few years, it's become much clearer to me how much this is actually a force working in the world. And it makes much more sense to me now why there are so many hadiths and so many protective du'as against this stuff. You know, this is evil. And also, you know, the influences of the demons. The Prophet ﷺ, or that they should become present. You know, so the demonic realm is real. And there are people, unfortunately, that are actively involved in attempting to bring that realm into this realm. And this is where it gets very strange.
What is the most resilient parasite? A bacteria? A virus? An intestinal worm?
What Mr. Cobb is trying to say.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold of the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate. An idea that is fully formed, fully understood, that sticks. Right in there somewhere.
In the dream state, your conscious defenses are lowered, and it makes your thoughts vulnerable to theft.
Every time you turn on the news, I kind of blame the media for what's going on wrong in the world right now, because they kind of just perpetuate stereotypes about people. They don't tell you that's what they're doing. They don't go, hey, this is what you need to think. But they know how people's brains work. What they do, they enforce all this. What they do is they'll show you an image of somebody of a different racial background, and then they'll show you an alternate image, like right away, of something completely different. They don't say the two images are together. They kind of present it like, what do you think? They'll show you an Arab guy and an explosion. I knew it, you know.
What I'm about to show you, on one level is depressing, but I don't want you to get depressed, because by being depressed, you only make yourselves another victim in the long list of victims to Iblis. Because Iblis wants to depress us, he wants to fill us with grief and despair. Even in our language, pollution, which is a dominant problem on the planet today, is recognized as a result of what human beings earn. And people don't realize this, but there are fires all over the world spreading and greater in intensity. They're becoming greater in intensity, and they're threatening the great forests of Europe. Nobody talks about this, but you can research this and you will find Russia has a major crisis. Spain has a major crisis. Many fires. We're on the west coast of the United States. We have many, many great fires that they can't put out. They're so difficult to put out. The climate change is also driving up temperatures, because as the temperatures rise, there's more incidence of fire. They're projected to burn more land as temperatures continue to rise. This is what is projected increase in annual burn areas, an increase of 650% in some of these areas. Another aspect of this fasad in the bar is the air itself. In India, they estimate every year 500,000 people die from air pollution. 500,000 people. Where's the war on air pollution? You had 15,000 people died from terrorism, and they moved heaven and earth to have this war on terrorism, and yet look at all these people suffering and dying from air pollution. Another aspect of this is soil degradation. Look at the red here, very degraded soil. All over the world, we're seeing the acidity is increasing in the soil. We're losing topsoil. Many places are going to become uninhabitable. We're seeing desertification. These are all realities that are happening. There's degraded soil all over the world. Desertification is literally where a place that once had foliage becomes desert, and you can see the red here is extreme. It's already happened. The other places is where it's happening in the yellow. And then the green, we still have forests, but there was a time when all of North Africa, you see where that white is? All of that is desert. But above, Ibn Khaldun said that before Bani Hilal got into Africa, a squirrel could go from Sinjab, a squirrel could go from Egypt all the way to Morocco without touching the ground. There were so many, and he said that Banu Hilal came, they were like locusts that devoured the resources. Another aspect of the fasad, وَالْأَرْضَ وَضَعَهَا لِلْأَنَامِ. Imam al-Tabari and others say al-anam are the creatures that sleep. So this is all these sentient beings. It's not just human beings. Some say it's al-ins wal-jinn, but some include the animal kingdom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا طَائِرٍ بِجَنَاحِي يَطِيرُ بِجَنَاحِي إِلَّا أُمَمٌ أَمْثَالُكُمْ. That there's no creature on the earth that walks the earth. There's no bird that flies with its two wings except their communities like unto you. Allah tells us that the animal kingdom have communities like unto us. And then He tells us that He left nothing out of this book. مَا فَرَّطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. We didn't leave anything out. Even the animals are acknowledged in the Qur'an. We have animals that mate for life. We know that animals make huge pilgrimages and vast migrations to places. Recently, some of you may have seen a man who was a caretaker of the elephants in South Africa. And when he died, the elephants made a march 12 miles. 2 days before he died, it took them 2 days to get there. And they literally made vigilance for 2 days in front of his house. They didn't eat. And this was a man who was taking care. He also saved the animals of the Iraqi zoo. He was a human being that was fulfilling the khilafah of caretaking for animals. And so he was honored by the animals themselves. We have 25 critically endangered species of the world that are from the most beautiful and great animals. They're the animals that human beings used to name their children after, and in many cultures they still do. Animals like tigers, asad, fahad. But if you look at the species that are endangered, they're not the cockroaches. They're not the rats. They're flourishing.
They're those qualities in us that are disappearing. The eagle, the peregrine, the lion, the tiger, the elephant, these great qualities in humans that are disappearing. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. We've got plenty of cockroaches out there in human disguise. We've got plenty of rats out there in human disguise, but we don't have these great animals. They're disappearing, hanging by a thread, because some people believe that the rhinoceros is like Viagra, and obviously they believe in what's called the doctrine of signatures. If an animal has something that looks like something, then it helps with that. They're hanging by the thread. They're almost extinct. A beautiful animal, Abul Qarn. Look at the oceans, the mischief in the sea. Look at this. And trust me, going on right now on those Gulf states, people are suffering. Not just the animals. The animals are suffering in the ocean, but humans are suffering because of all the toxic chemicals that they put into the ocean to dissolve that. There's much evidence for this. Many poor people, they don't care about poor people. British Petroleum, and I'll name them. They can come and sue me. I don't have anything. They can take it all. This is what we're doing to the oceans. Dhahar al-fasadu. Look at this. What did that animal do to deserve us? We're supposed to be caretakers. This is fasad, pollution, corruption. But what's happening in the ocean to our fish? Because as we saw, our commentators said that when corruption, pollution spreads from human activities on the land and the sea, it causes a loss of the blessings of the land and the sea. And one of the things that we're seeing since 1950, they estimate in Nature magazine, one study said 90% of the large fish are gone. 90%, people, 90%. We have literally decimated the oceans from overfishing. They estimate that in just 20 years, tuna fish will be completely extinct at current fishing rates. There are no longer huge fish. They're not finding these giant marlins. For those of you who know about Jiro dreams of sushi, Jiro, a master sushi chef in Japan, said that he can't find the good fish that they used to have in the marketplaces anymore because of overconsumption. And also all this cat food, fish being fished for cat food. I asked my friend from Afghanistan, what do cats eat in Afghanistan? He said leftovers. That's what cats used to eat everywhere, leftovers, so you didn't waste food. But now you have a finicky cat and you've been convinced by marketers that you have to buy special food for them. And this is all just a way of making more money. Look at what's happened to the cod. These are the diminishing numbers that we're seeing. This is best case scenario. But the future, by 2048, they're estimating that most of the fish will be dead according to the current rates. And big fish stock fall 90% since 1950. This was in the National Geographic 10 years ago. Nobody's talking about this. Jellyfish, I'm reading a book right now called Stung by the world's foremost leading expert on jellyfish. She said it's already too late. The jellyfish are taking over the ocean. Now I want to tell you something about jellyfish. Jellyfish are mindless, they have no brain, and they are spineless. They have no spine, and all they do is consume. And if you want to understand, the oceans cosmologically have always represented human consciousness. That's the exteriorization of human consciousness. What's taking over our minds is jellyfish. We're becoming mindless and spineless consumers. And the animal kingdom's not going to be silent about it because they have as much right by God to be here as we do. And we were told to be caretakers. But let's look at the root of the crises. Why is there biosphere destruction? The first and foremost cause of all of this is the economy of usury that creates this cancerous growth, this idea of completely uncontrolled growth. And this is where the banksters are much to do with all of this. And they have to be seen for the criminals that they are. And all you have to read is Confessions of an Economic Hitman to know the type of things that they do in these third world countries to create permanent debt. Now they're borrowing from from the Federal Reserve at 1%, and they're loaning it out to students at 7%, student loans to get an education in the United States. The student debt in the United States now is $1.2 trillion. It's criminal that students go to school now and they come out with debts of $100,000, $200,000 if they go to very expensive schools. These are criminal activities done. There's now greater student debt in my country than there is credit card debt. And this is because they want people to be permanent servicers of debt. This is a new type of slavery, indentured servitude, mortgage, mortgage, the death grip until you die. But Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu wattaqullah. Guard yourselves against God. Guard yourselves against God. وَذَرُوا مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الرِّبَا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you're believers, guard yourselves. Avoid usury. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا فَأَذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. And if you don't know that there's going to be a war, Allah will bring it down. God will bring it down. He'll bring the system down. It will collapse. It's been on the verge of collapse several times, and it will collapse. Another major reason is the consumer society itself. I shop, therefore I am. This is one of the things that man boasts about in the Qur'an. يَقُولُ أَهْلَكْتُ مَالًا لُبَدًا. I have consumed great quantities of wealth. Consumer, it first emerged in the English language in the 1530s as one who squanders and wastes. Consumer is also, in Old English, it's a name of the devil. Another major reason is a war economy. Look at the United States. Look how much they spend on weapons. The next closest country is China. And we can see now this emerging problem between China and the United States. And I said this over 10 years ago, that the Muslims are just a paper tiger right now until China gets reared up. And then just to keep this arms race going, to keep Raytheon and General Electric and all these corporations that bring good things to death, right? Just for them to make all of their money. This is human greed. This is the result of building these bombs. This is what happens to human beings when we allow these mad people to rule our economies, to govern our nations. These are insane people. There's no reason for us to fight the Iranians. My country I have nothing against any of those Iranian people on the street in Tehran. Nothing whatsoever. And if I met them, we'd sit down and have tea and speak and talk. I have nothing against the Iraqi people. I have nothing against the Egyptian people. I have nothing against the Russian people. If you don't step on my toes, I don't step on your toes. But we have rulers in power that are making billions of dollars. And the people, the puppets that are put into power to represent them, not to represent us, to represent them. These puppets that create wars because they have war economies, and then they come in with all of their contracts and they rebuild these countries. And we fall for it again and again and again. Human beings, not just Muslims, human beings should wake up to what's happening to us, to what's happening to our planet. Syria, over 1 million houses destroyed. Do you know how hard it is to build a house? Do you know how much time it takes to earn the money to build a house? 1 million houses destroyed, 5 million refugees. Where did they get the armaments? Who's supplying them? Who wins in these games? Certainly not the human beings that are at the brunt of all of this violence. Look at the government budgets in relation to education throughout the world. This is insanity. These weapons of mass destruction have nothing to do with us. Our money should not be going to these things. Our tax dollars should not be going to these things. This is sinister. Another major reason is oil consumption. And this cannot continue on. It can't. It will not continue on. People have to recognize that this will come to an end. This is one of the great miracles of our Prophet. Our Prophet ﷺ predicted in a hadith, تَقِيُّ الْأَرْضُ أَفْلَاذَ كَبِدِهَا أمثال الأسطوان من الذهب والفضة فيجي القاتل فيقول في هذا قتلت. He said that the earth will vomit up. قَاءَ يَقِيءُ means أخرج من فمه ما كانت في معدته. This is a miracle of the Prophet. And he said that the earth will vomit what was in its liver. And aflad, according to the Arabic philologists, aflad is the kunuz al-ard. Aflad al-ard is kunuz al-ard, the treasures of the earth. But this is, once it's been digested, it vomits it up. This is exactly what hydrocarbons are. They were once on the earth, they got swallowed by the earth, they're digested, they're stored in the liver of the earth like glycogen. It's energy. Just like you have carbohydrates, you have hydrocarbons. The only difference is an oxygen molecule. It spits up, it literally vomits up. And there it is, vomiting it up. And then the Prophet said, like ustuwan, ka'amthal al-ustuwan. If you look at this, if you look up there, that's an ustuwan. In Arabic, ustuwana is a cylinder. And he said they'll be like cylinders of gold and silver, amthal, as if they were gold and silver. This is a clear miracle of the Prophet where he predicted the barrels of oil. Because the barmil is a ustuwana in Arabic and Fusha. This is a clear prophecy from our Prophet ﷺ. But also, I want to tell you that the earth is we're giving the earth diabetes because oil is like sugar. It's a refined energy. We're using it to fuel our societies in the same way we're using sugar to fuel our bodies. And the earth is getting acidic rain. The oceans are becoming acidic. The soil is becoming acidic. This is what's happening because of this overconsumption of oil, which is completely insane. There are over 1 billion vehicles in operation. The car has to come to an end. People don't want to give up the car, but the car has to come to an end. The Prophet said, هناك إبر للشياطين وستكون بيوت للشياطين وأما الإبل فلم أراها وأما الإبل فقد رأيت وأما البيوت فلم أراها. Nasiruddin al-Albani said, the hadith is about vehicles, and he considered that the biyut al-shayateen would be the cars that people drive. The Prophet said, Rakibun wahidun shaitan. The one that rides alone is a shaitan. Most people in these cars are riding alone. We also know that the way that shaitan sits is between sun and shade. This is the ga'datu shaitan, is half in the sun, half in the shade. Anybody driving a car is half in the sun, half in the shade. And this is what is literally causing all of this global warming. Now let's go to the self. Now I don't want, because I know some people in here might have children with autism, and it's certainly a great difficulty in your households. And there's no blame on, this is one of the diseases of our time. And I'm not saying anything about individuals that have autism. I want to make that clear. I actually believe that part of the reason why autism has manifested is because these are actually deeply sensitive human beings that are overwhelmed by this bombardment, because this is a disease of modern cultures. They're overwhelmed by this overstimulation. But I want to look at what I would call autism is a pervasive developmental disorder characterized by severe deficits in social interaction and communication, by an extremely limited range of activities and interests, and often by the presence of repetitive stereotype behavior. We are seeing social autism. These young people now are growing up in private worlds. They spend more time on their digital games, and in this private world, they're losing the ability to interact socially. Our psychiatrists and psychologists are seeing these deficits in communication, their inability to read faces, their inability to really have deep conversation and communication. People are allowing their children to grow up as a social experiment. Look at the average body mass index, and if you don't know what that is, it's the amount of fat that you have on your body. And look at these countries, and look how some of the Muslim countries, inshallah, this is a tragedy. And I don't want to make ta'yir or ta'yib of any country. There's a few countries that are listed here, and no offense to those people. I'm not trying. لا أريد أن أفضحكم. This is all open source. سامحوني يا جماعة الخليج. سامحوني. I'm asking you. I have many good friends. I love the people of the Gulf. I really do. And they've been very good to me. I studied there. I studied in the United Arab Emirates. I have great love for the United Arab Emirates. And so I really, and Kuwait, I've had many beautiful memories in my times in Kuwait. So I'm not trying to make ta'yir or ta'yib. I'm not saying this as a joke. But unfortunately, the world's fattest countries, this is one of the few areas where we're actually beat America. America's number 2. And we have a Muslim country that's number 1. Number 6 is another Muslim country. And number 8 is another Muslim country. This is the other Gulf War syndrome. And this is, as a result, they've proven from the fast food from the United States of America, because the food is not food. They shouldn't call it fast food. And we know al-ajalatu min ash-shaytan. They should call it demonic calories. That's what they should call it, demonic calories. Don't eat fast food. Eat slow food and eat it slowly. Enjoy your food. Don't eat fast food. But this is what's happening. The number 1 country for staples. We know that the Prophet, for you doctors out there, I'm waiting for somebody to do this. I'm going to give you a free idea. You can make an infomercial, make a lot of money. The Prophet ﷺ, they used to put stones, flat stones on their stomach and tie them. Just get some kind of a girdle with a metal weight and do a double-blind study, and they don't have to get staples. They just put it on their stomach and they won't feel hungry. That's what our Prophet did. It's a sunnah, so it must work. And so somebody should do that instead of having some kind of operation. And here is the real culprit. And I'm sorry for whoever has the McDonald's wakala in the Muslim countries or anywhere else. I am against McDonald's, I'm against Burger King, I'm against all of these. Really, I'm against them. And they put it in Arabic, you know, like, what's that? What's McDonald's have to do with Arabic? Please, stop. Now look at this. إنما أخشى عليكم شهوات الغي في بطونكم وفروجكم ومضلات الهوى. I'm afraid of the appetites that will lead you astray from your stomachs and from your private parts, because there's a relationship between overeating and too much sexuality. And this is a problem. Look at this. This is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Now you can see this as a joke, right? Don't overeat in Ramadan, because Muslims overeat in Ramadan. Even though Ramadan, you're supposed to experience hunger so you can relate to poor people, to people that go hungry. This is actually a cartoon, but it's not. It's based on reality, people. Look at this guy. He's passed out after he can't even pray Maghrib. He's just passed out. Unbelievable. And this is the reality of it. This is the reality, people. Look at it. Take a hard look. This is the reality of our planet. We've got people starving to death and people dying. One of the poets, he said, I'm amazed at a community whose Lord has told them to help one another. And that they're all brothers, and yet some of them are dying from hunger while others are dying from overeating. We're digging our graves with our teeth. This unfortunately, these are from a Muslim country. I won't say which one. Those little kids on both sides, you're looking at Muslims. Think about this, people. How can we live on a planet that has this type of disparity? How can we do it? How do we sleep at night? Our Prophet ﷺ said, "لَيْسَ الْمُؤْمِنُ الَّذِي يَشْبَعُ وَجَارُهُ جَائِعٌ إِلَى جَنبِهِ." He's not a believer who goes to sleep satiated and yet his neighbors are hungry. And now we live on a global community. We know about this. Look at the prevalence of 2025. This is 1 out of every 3 Americans will have diabetes in 2050. Look at this. The highest countries in the world are in Muslim countries. Literally the highest countries of diabetes. And we're talking mostly type 2. 80% of food in the United States in the grocery stores is spiked with sugar. By 2050, 1 out of 3. Here's another problem. Human trafficking. There are more slaves today. And there are many other problems. They estimate, the Scotland Yard, based on the records that they have of pedophile material on the internet, they reckon that there are 80 million children have been sexually abused. 80 million. Massive trauma to little children, innocent children. Human trafficking, 80% of it is for sex industry. This is disgusting. This should make us vomit, but this is what's happening on our planet. Who is searching for sex? If you actually did it by the numbers related to this is done where they actually look at the numbers who have access to the internet based on the population sizes. We have Muslim countries that are outnumbering in their searches Even the United States is actually #1 for downloads. This is happening in Muslim countries. You're in denial if you deny this. There are people here who are probably, they have this tribulation. Our Prophet said, إِذَا سَمِعَ أَحَدُكُمْ بِالدَّجَّالِ فَلْيَنَعْ عَنْهُ. If one of you hears about the Dajjal, let him avoid the Dajjal. And then he said, فَإِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ يَحْسِبُ أَنَّهُ مُؤْمِنٌ فَيَتْبَعُهُ بِمَا يُبْعَثُ بِهِ مِنَ الشَّهَوَاتِ. This is in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed. He said, one of you will believe he's a believer, and then he'll go and he'll begin to follow him because of what he brings from all the appetites and desires. We have people addicted to these things. They're following. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي اتَّخَذَ إِلَهُ هَوَاهُ. Haven't you seen the one who took his desires as a God? If you're obeying these desires, you are making these desires your God. And Allah is a jealous God. إِنَّهُ غَيُّورٌ يَغَارُ عَلَى دِينِهِ وَعَلَى طَاعَتِهِ وَحَذِّرُكُمْ يَا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ يَا مَعَشَرَ الْعَرَبِ يَا مَعَشَرَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ أُحَذِّرُكُمْ تَحْذِيرًا مِنَ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى أُحَذِّرُكُمْ توبوا إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى توبوا إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى خالفوا هواكم جاهدوا أعداءكم من الهوى من النفس شيطان دنيا وهوى جاهدوا أنفسكم توبوا إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى أحذركم تحذيرا والله أحذركم تحذيرا. Overconsumption. إن المبذرين كانوا إخوان الشياطين. Those who are extravagant, they are the brethren of the demons. And Shaitan is an ingrate to his Lord. This is one of the problems. I'm running out of time, so I won't do this, but you can see this, the story of stuff, how consumer goods are done. Results of overconsumption. This cannot last. This cannot last. We put out every week all over. America has 500 million metric tons of garbage every year. This is creating methane. It decomposes, facade. It decomposes. It's actually having more harm in terms of the gases. It's having more harm. The planet is just becoming filled with garbage everywhere. The animals are suffering because of this. Look at this. There are 2 places in the middle of the ocean that it's bigger than Texas. It's bigger than Texas. And then we have khasf and maskh. Khasafa means the ground swallows you up. In Arabic, in English, we don't have a word. The Arabs have a word for it. We call them sinkholes now. Allah says, do you feel secure that he who in the heaven will not cause you to be swallowed up by the earth?
We have the first images from Florida of that cavernous sinkhole that swallowed a home and a young man in his bedroom. And ABC's Gio Benitez shows us. He is there.
This is our first look at the massive sinkhole that swallowed up 37-year-old Jeff Bush while sleeping in his bed. Look closer. Authorities tell ABC News the sinkhole, about 30 feet wide and 100 feet deep, could well extend underneath the 2 neighboring homes, both less than 40 feet away.
The Prophet said the end of time won't come until you will see maskh, which is for humans to become distorted, to transmutate, to become disfigured and ugly. This is maskh, people. These are real human beings that have altered their, this is maskh. These people will be taken to account. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is shadidul iqab. He is al-muntaqim. But Allah said, قَالَ إِنِّي عَلُمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He said to the angels, I know what you don't know. These are teachers that I studied with. These are the ones that Allah was talking about, and those who follow the rightly guided people. And these are people, تِلْكَ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةِ نَجْعَلُهَا لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُرِيدُونَ عُلُوًا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فَسَادًا. They don't want to be exalted in the earth, and they don't want corruption. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This is why Allah said, "Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun," that there would be people that worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there would be people that would bow down to Allah, there would be people that fought themselves, they made jihad against their nafs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May He make us people who recognize the time we're living in and not be amongst the people that are part of the problem, but make us among the people that are part of the solution. أقول قولي هذا. Please forgive me. Anybody, I did not intend to shame anybody in this auditorium. Wallahi, Allah knows what's in my heart. I did not intend to shame anyone here, or any country, or any people. This is a message that I felt compelled to convey. Wastaghfirullah wa atubu ilayhi. Assalamu alaikum.
We now have to use one currency as an international currency almost. That is the US dollar. But the US dollar also is not stable. Sometimes it is stronger, sometimes it's weaker. But gold has got a certain value for all countries in the world. Now, if you use a gold as a standard, which was what it was at the Bretton Woods, if we use gold as a standard, we can call our currencies by whatever name, but they must relate to the value of gold in your country. So if you know the value of gold in your country and the value of gold in the trading partner, then we know how much gold is worth during the trade. And that we can call that a gold dinar as a standard. And that is what was proposed. And I think we should study this very carefully, because today we are hampered by having to use just one currency for international trade, the US dollar.
This was a magazine called Life magazine. It's a very popular magazine in America, and it was a series of pictures and statements about religious people. And I want to show you the nature of their Dajjal. This is a Hindu, and it looks like he's standing on water. Oh, nice face, beautiful man. You know, they don't tell you that he might probably drinks urine and worships, seriously worships idols and things like that, you know. And next one. And then here, the Japanese Shintoism, you can see high-tech, very clean, and there he is in his traditional robe, indicating psychologically to the viewer that here is successful blending of the traditional with the modern. The Japanese culture has been successful in maintaining their traditions and yet becoming fully modernized. Right? Again, they don't tell you that they worship ancestors. That's the religion. The next one. Looks like a Muslim there, but not. The Pope, the Pope is shown here, very devotional person. Next one. Anglicanism, which is here, right, in England, and this is the Church of England, 56-year-old. Very nice, beautiful robes. He's on the straight and narrow, obviously. Going to paradise, no doubt. And then the next one. And now this one, Luther, he's on top of the world. He's clouds, it looks like a heavenly scene. He just needs wings and a harp. And then next one. And then Dalai Lama, who said he used to worship this idol in his early years, and then he realized it was a devil. And so he stopped worshiping it, right? Well, maybe you'll find out later that the other ones are devils as well. This is the nature, right, of learning. But they failed to tell you that the Tibetan Buddhists, when they were in power, outlawed the bicycle, completely against any progress, right? Whatsoever, or quote-unquote progress. But the point is, the Americans are so dead set on making everybody follow their way, but here they raise him up to almost a godlike status in America, really. The intellectuals, movie stars, all these people. And then next one. And here we have the great scholarly tradition of the Jewish people. Here's a rabbi reading his Torah probably, or Talmud, and he's under an olive tree, and it's in the Holy Land, beautiful scene. I don't know where the hat came from. It doesn't look very Middle Eastern to me, but there he is anyway. Next one. And here we have the Muslim. It's very interesting, you know? I mean, if you look at that right there, what is that? I mean, who piled that up there? You know, it's not even a, you know, it's not even a wall or the beginning of a wall. I mean, they put us in the middle of a garden, and then here this poor man, he's wondering what's going on, and you know, it's unbelievable. So you look at the psychological impact of that. You see somebody reading those and seeing all those religions, the men of God, and then here, our man in the rubble heap, right? I mean, they could have had him in Al-Azhar, in the oldest university in the world. They could have put that on there. There's a lot of things they could have done, right? They took him out to a garbage dump and said, we want to get a picture of you here, in the midst of rubble. You know, and you know, he's probably, I don't know, he probably wasn't aware, because you know, they're not aware of the sophistication of their propaganda techniques. You know, he just said, let's get several pictures, took them to different places, but that's the one they picked. And that's my point. This is what they do.
By the way, just on a factual point, since we heard a lot about the second speaker, about how backward we Muslims all are, on a factual point, you said that Islam was born in Saudi Arabia. Islam was born in 610 AD. Saudi Arabia was born in 1932 AD. So you were only 1,322 years off. Not bad? Not bad start there. Talking of maths, by the way, a man named Al-Khwarizmi was one of the greatest mathematicians of all time, a Muslim, worked in the golden age of Islam. He's the guy who came up with not just algebra, but algorithms. Without algorithms, you wouldn't have laptops. Without laptops, Daniel Johnson tonight wouldn't have been able to print out his speech in which he came to berate us Muslims for holding back the advance and intellectual achievements of the West, which all happened without any contribution from anyone else other than the Judeo-Christian people of Europe. In fact, Daniel David Levering, the author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and author of The Golden Crucible, points out that there would be no Renaissance, there would be no Reformation in Europe without the role played by Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd and some of the great Muslim theologians, philosophers, scientists in bringing Greek texts to Europe. As for this being our university, I will leave that to the imagination as to who is our and who is there. I studied here too. To address the gentleman's very valid point here, I'm not going to play that game. I don't actually believe that Christianity is a religion of violence and hate because of what the LRA does in Uganda or what Crusaders did to Jews and Muslims in Jerusalem when they took back the city in the 12th or 13th or whatever century it was. I believe that Christianity, like Islam, like pretty much every mainstream religion, is based on love and compassion and faith. I do follow a religion in which 113 out of the 114 chapters of the Qur'an begins by introducing the God of Islam as a God of mercy and compassion. I would not have it any other way. I don't follow a religion which introduces my God to me as a God of war, as some kind of Greek God of wrath, as a God of hate and injustice. Not at all. As Adam pointed out, you go through the Quran and you see the mercy and the love and the justice. And yes, you have verses that refer to warfare and violence. Of course it does. This is not a motion about pacifism. I'm not here to argue that Islam is a pacifistic faith. It is not. Islam allows military action, violence in certain limited contexts. And yes, a minority of Muslims do take it out of that context. But is it religious? Well, we talked about Woolwich. Daniel and Anne-Marie have suggested that it's definitely religion that's behind all of this. Listen to Professor Robert Pape of the University of Chicago, one of America's leading terrorism experts, who, unlike our esteemed opposition tonight, studied every single case of suicide terrorism between 1980 and 2005, 315 cases in total. And he concluded, and I quote, "There is little connection between suicide terrorism and Islamic fundamentalism or any of the world's religions. Rather, what nearly all suicide terrorist attacks have in common is a specific secular and strategic goal to compel modern democracies to withdraw military forces from territory that the terrorists consider to be their homeland." And the irony is, when we talk about terrorism, the irony is that the opposition and the Muslim terrorists, the Al-Qaeda types, actually have one thing in common. Because they both believe that Islam is a warlike, violent religion. They both agree on that. They have everything in common. Osama bin Laden would be nodding along to everything he's heard tonight from the opposition side. He agrees with them. The problem is that mainstream Muslims don't. The majority of Muslims around the world don't. In fact, a gentleman here started quoting all sorts of polls. Gallup carried out the biggest poll of Muslims around the world, of 50,000 Muslims in 35 countries. 93% of Muslims rejected 9/11 and suicide attacks. And of the 7% who didn't, they all, when polled and focus grouped, cited political reasons for their support for violence, not religious reasons. And as for Islamic scholars and what they say, well, Daniel talks about our University of Oxford. We'll go down to Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies, get hold of a man named Sheikh Afifi al-Akiti, who is a massively well-credentialed and well-respected Islamic scholar who has studied across the world, who in the days after 7/7 published a fatwa denouncing terrorism in the name of Islam, calling for the protection of all non-combatants at all times, and describing suicide bombings as an innovation with no basis in Islamic law. Go and listen to Sheikh Tahir al-Qadri, one of Pakistan's most famous Islamic scholars, who published a 600-page fatwa condemning the killing of all innocents and all suicide bombings unconditionally without any ifs or buts. There's nothing new here. This is mainstream Islam, mainstream scholarship, which has said this for years. You don't go out and kill people willy-nilly in the high street or anywhere else, on a bus or a mall, based on verses of the Qur'an that you cherry-pick without any context, any understanding, any interpretation, or any commentary. Please. Well, it
doesn't happen apparently.
I didn't say it doesn't happen at all. I never said it didn't happen. I don't blame Islam. Yes, it's a very good point. And a lot of us are campaigning against that. And we're campaigning against it in the name of Islam. We're campaigning against it in the name of various interpretations of Islam. Anne-Marie comes and scares us with her talk of Sharia law. I would like to see the book of Sharia law. It doesn't exist. People argue over what Sharia law is. And you empower the extremists by saying there is only one version. You empower them all. I don't believe you took any interruptions, Anne-Marie, so I think you should stay there for a moment. Here's what we're dealing with. Here's what we're dealing with. I took your point. Here we are dealing with a 1,400-year-old global religion, followed by 1.6 billion people in every corner of the world, a quarter of humanity, of all backgrounds, cultures, ethnicities. And yet the opposition tonight wants to generalize, stereotype, smear in order to desperately win this debate.
We need to be very conscious of is, what does this technology do to our primordial self? Because that primordial self needs to be nurtured by other human beings who have that nature. And, so this is very important in our time. And, to learn to use our technology very, very intelligently and very wisely. Of course, it gives us tremendous benefits. I'm able to be here because of technology. You're able to hear me because of the technology. We're being filmed on it, so I don't believe that I think we should be thankful for it. But at the same time, we have to know how to use it. And this is one of the things one of the great books on technology is Jacques Ellul. Right. This was one of our classics back in the old days. And Jacques Ellul warns about, how technology sets its own rules. It goes its own direction. And I think that Jacques Ellul's book is a little bit problematic because we don't want to make people so pessimistic, right, that they can't deal with the world they live in. But, we have to, and this is one of the things that Ellul says, is that the massification of society is required for technology to have its march. So you have to break down significant religious and social groups who could apply principle.
Right.
And this is why also for us, as people that should be principled, we want to be principled, then we have to also learn about these things. How do they affect us? How are we going to use them? And to live in a way that's beneficial. How many of our people are destroyed on social media, right? Dr. Jackson, who many of you know, he said that social media is not going to leave us a single leader, a single value, a single principle.
I thought it wasn't real. Your mind makes it real. If you're killed in the Matrix, you die here?
The body cannot live without the mind.
We like war. We like war. We're a warlike people. We like war because we're good at it. And you know why we're good at it? Because we get a lot of practice. This country's only 200 years old, and already we've had 10 major wars. We average a major war in this country every 20 years, so we're good at it. We're not very good at anything else anymore. Can't build a decent car, can't make a TV set or a VCR. Got no steel industry left, can't get health care to our old people, can't educate our young people, but we can bomb your country, all right? Especially if your country is full of brown people. Oh, we like that, don't we? That's our hobby. That's our new job in the world, bombing brown people. Iraq, Panama, Grenada, Libya, you got some brown people in your country, tell them to watch out, or we'll goddamn bomb them. Well, when's the last white people you can remember that we bombed? Can you remember the last white? Can you remember any white people we've ever bombed? The Germans. The Germans are the only ones. And the only reason for that is because they were trying to cut in on our action. They wanted to dominate the world.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
In general, 94% of the people who are killed in the world's conflicts are Muslim. Currently, 1 in every 3 weapons manufactured are sold to the Middle East. Instead of spending their resources on education, health, research, and developments, the Muslims point guns at each other over very simple reasons. And it is the Western armed traders who are being made richer and richer.
So one of the temporary delusions that we have today is that the Muslims in America are a threat to the security of the United States of America as a community. One of the delusions in the United States today is that somehow Sharia law is a threat to the United States of America. We have states that are passing anti-Sharia laws. They don't even know what the Sharia is, and they're passing anti-Sharia laws in legislation. $42 million has been spent, according to a study, on the Islamophobic literature and the films and all of these things that have been produced. $42 million. And this is what officially that we know about. There's a lot of money that we don't know about. Islam, our Sharia says you have to obey the laws of the land. The verses that were read earlier, those opening verses are to the rulers. Give people their trusts, because you have a sacred trust as a government. Give people their amanat. And if you judge justly. And this is good advice. But then the advice is to the people, the citizens. Obey God, obey the messenger. In other words, be virtuous and upright. Because we don't have any penal code, none of those things of Sharia that have to do with laws of criminal justice and things. That has nothing to do with Muslims other than people in authority in Muslim lands, and that's their prerogative. But then it says, and obey those in authority from you. In other words, Muslims, by consensus of our scholars, are obliged to obey the laws of the land. And if they're secular laws, they have to obey them. The only thing that we don't obey is if somebody makes a law that everybody has to drink a toast on Christmas with wine. We're not going to do that. Now, that's absurd, but those are the only things that we don't obey if it actually goes against something that we can't do. But everything else we have to do by law. That's the Sharia. In the country of the United States, the Sharia is the Constitution of the United States. And that is what all of our scholars have said. And Ibn Abi Zayd, one of the earliest scholars, in his book, Nuadar wa Ziyadat, he says, he was asked, if somebody is in the land of the Romans, meaning the Europeans, if they're there and they went in with like a visa at the time, it was musta'man, they called them, somebody who was given permission to come in, so they're secured, their person. And then they aggress upon them. Do they have to obey the laws? Here's what he said. If the aggression is from rabble amongst them or criminals, they have to obey the laws. But if the aggression is from the government, then they're no longer, bound by the law because they that government broke the trust of you being in there securely. So that is an example of how sophisticated early on our scholars were. So when we think of the United States, we have to think of ourselves as part of a story. The Muslims are part of a narrative, and we have been part of this narrative from the beginning. The Muslims were here from the very start. There's evidence that we were probably here before Columbus, and that's a debatable point. But we know that the Muslims have been here for over 500 years. There's ample historical evidence to prove that. We have cities in the United States that were named by Muslims. There are several cities in the United States that were named Medina. We have a city in Indiana that's called Muhammad, the city of Muhammad, Illinois. We have a city in Indiana called Medina, and these are Turkish and Arabs that came to that city and founded that city and named it after Medina. We have a city that was first named Mecca, and then they changed it to Medina. So the Muslims have been here, and they have been part of this. If you look at the dome above the Library of Congress in the main hall, you will see Islam. All of the other names are names of civilizations, but Islam was singled out because of its contribution to human knowledge. And this is really important for us to remember. So we have been part of this story.
It was us that scorched the sky.
51 navigational stars in their book. Out of those 51, 43 still have their Arabic names in their textbooks. 43 are still called by their Arabic names because it is the Arab and the Muslims and the Persians who spent their nights looking at those glorious stars and writing their names down. And they came to the Europeans through Latin, and out of a respect for the Muslim scholarship, they didn't change their names. They didn't Latinize them. And there are 43 of them. This is what they call them to this day. Do you think this is a coincidence? That the stars have names that the Muslims gave them? The heavens belong to the Muslims. The heavens belong to the Muslims. And I want to tell you something that I realized recently. If you want to know who's ruling the world, look who is most advanced in astronomy, because that is a clear indication of the rulers of the world. And you can see it with the Babylonians, with the Indians, with the Chinese, with the Greeks, with the Muslims, with the Europeans, and now with the Americans. In the Oracle of Delphi, which was the Greek source of wisdom, there was written over that oracle, as above, so below. In other words, the order of the heaven must be brought down to earth. How is that done? If you look in the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Rahman that He raised up the heavens. And then wada' al-mizan. He placed this balance. And then He placed the earth for all living creatures. So between the heavens and the earth is the mizan. What is the mizan other than justice? And where does justice emanate other than the marketplace? Because it is the marketplace that gave us justice. We live in a world immersed in usury, a world immersed in economic injustice, and everywhere you look and see economic suffering, the root cause is usury. And Allah has prohibited from people. He's given us a mizan, and He gave us iron to establish the mizan. He gave us hadid. He gave us iron and told us, fihi ba'sun shadid wa manafi'u linnas, that in it is much fierceness and great benefit for humanity. Wa anzalna al-hadid. Look up in the Encyclopedia Britannica. They say that iron came from meteorites from the heavens. The source of iron is the heavens itself. The source of justice is heavens. The source of the sword of justice is the heaven. The source of the mizan is from heaven. Everything comes from heaven. Order is from heaven. Go out tonight, look up into that sky, and the few stars that they can't put out are still up there. Look up and know that those stars have a Lord, and that Lord has a divine order, and He has commanded His creation to look to the heavens for guidance, materially and physically, spiritually, just as we look to the heavens to guide our paths on this earth. Like the pilot who said we always have the stars, only they've forgotten because they're depending on their machinery to guide them, and yet their global positioning system is still dependent on satellites that they put into the heavens, because there is no guidance, neither material nor spiritual, except that it comes from the heavens. And this is what humanity has forgotten, and this is why you're here, to remind people of where guidance comes from. This is why we're here, lest we forget, lest we forget, lest we forget. This is why we're here. So people, go out with hearts that are as vast or more vast than the heavens.
And most peoples are in such a state of disequilibrium, whether in the West or in the East. There's just a state of disequilibrium everywhere, a state of turmoil and chaos. And it's increasing, and you will see it increase. And this is part of the end time scenario. It is important that they know the signs of the end of time, because a number of things happen towards the end of time, and one of them is confusion. People become confused. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that a man will get up in the morning with his intellect, and he'll go to bed in a state of bewilderment. A man will wake up in the morning with his intellect, and he will go to sleep in a state of bewilderment. يصبح المرء حليما ويمسي حيرانا. ابن عباس رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من أشراط الساعة أو القيامة إضاعة الصلوات. From the end of time is the loss of prayers. The loss of prayers. Now, I'll tell you something about that hadith. Imam Yusuf Nabahani in his Ida'ah says, the loss of prayer does not simply mean that people stop praying. It means even those who praise prayers are unaccepted, because they don't know anything about the prayer. They don't know the fara'id. They don't know how to correct their sahw if they make a mistake. They can't distinguish between sunan and fada'il. They have no knowledge of the prayer. They don't do their wudu properly. They pray in the improper times, which is one of the signs of the end of time, that people lose the understanding of how the times were determined by the prayer and pray outside of time. Sayyidina Umar in the Muwatta of Imam Malik said, Inni la ara, he wrote a letter to his governors, Inni la ara min ahammi amurikum as-salah, faman hafizaha wa hafiza alayha faqad hafiza deenahu. The most important of all your matters is your prayer. So don't think the prayer is insignificant. The most important of all of your matters is the prayer. The most important of all of your matters is the prayer. So whoever guards it and is vigilant about it, فَقَدْ حَفِظَ دِينَهُ. He has guarded his deen. وَمَنْ ضَيَعَهَا فَهُوَ لِمَا سِوَاهَا أَضْيَعَ. And whoever leaves the prayer or is negligent about it, he's negligent more so about everything else in his life. نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ. They forgot Allah, and so Allah forgot them and caused them to forget their own selves. So a person who leaves the prayer has no tawfiq from Allah. A person negligent about the prayer has no tawfiq from Allah. And this is something that we've forgotten. And then he said, وَاتِّبَاعِ الشَّهَوَاتِ, following the shahawat. In another tradition, the Prophet ﷺ said that مَنْ يَعِيشْ مُنْكُمْ, whoever lives from amongst you, فَسَيَرَى أُمُورًا عِظَامًا, he will see great things, vast things, unbelievable things. يَتَفَاقَمُ شَأْنُهَا فِي صُدُورِكُمْ. The matters of those things will be so vast in when you look at them. They'll seem so incredible to the people. And then he said to the point, حَتَّى يَذْكُرْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا هَلْ ذَكَرَ نَبِيُّنَا شَيْئًا مِنْ هَذِهِ. Did our Prophet make mention of any of these things? Did our Prophet make mention of any of these things? Did our Prophet make mention of America? Did our Prophet make mention of the television? Did our Prophet make mention of the mass media, of public relations? Did our Prophet make mention of the fact that our cities would be bombed with impunity? And the Muslims would sit by and watch it happen? And some of them would watch it happen on the news and then go back to their dinner? We're living in very, very powerful times. And so the importance of knowing the signs is that when you recognize a sign, if you're educated, you know what it means. Because a sign symbolizes something. That's the nature of signs. They symbolize. So for instance, in the Arabic language, you learn that in grammar, you have signs. You have signs of inflection, i'rab. You have signs that are ashkal or vowelings, and you have signs that are letters. And so when you see those signs in the Arabic script, you know what they mean. So the point being is, if you don't know how to read signs, you won't understand anything. And this is part of the age we're living in. If you don't understand the signs, you won't know what it means. And if you don't know what it means, the nature of not knowing the meaning of something is that you become confused. And the nature of confusion is that you lose your stability. And the word in Arabic for stability is thabat. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the end of time, ask for thabat. Al-thabat, al-thabat. Stability on your deen. Ibn Mas'ud said, does the hour have a knowledge that you can know it by? He said, Na'am ya Ibn Mas'ud. And this is a science that our ulama need to reestablish. Jibreel taught 4 things. There's not 3 aspects of Islam. There are 4. People say Islam, Iman, Ihsan. But Hadith Jibreel has alamat as-sa'. And Muslims have to know these signs, so they recognize them when they see them. And there are many signs. One of the signs, يَكُونَ الْوَلَدُ غَيْذًا, children become filled with rage. وَأَنْ يَكُونَ الْمَطْرُ قَيْذًا, rain becomes burning or acidic, acid rain. وَأَنْ تَفِيضَ الْأَشْرَارُ فَيْضًا, you'll see evil people spreading widely. يَا ابْنَ مَسْعُودٍ مِنْ عَلَامَ السَّاعَةِ وَأَشْرَاطِهَا أَنْ يُؤْتَمَنَ الْخَائِنِ وَأَنْ يُخَوِّنَ الْأَمِينَ. People will trust treacherous people, and they will consider trustworthy people treacherous. وَأَنْ يُصَدَّقَ الْكَاذِبُ وَأَنْ يُكَذِّبَ الصَّادِقُ. The truthful one will be called a liar, and the one telling a lie will be called truthful. These are signs. يَا ابْنَ مَسْعُودٍ إِنَّ مِنْ عَلَامِ السَّاعَةِ وَأَشْرَاطِهَا أَنْ تُوَاصِلَ الْأَطْبَاقُ وَأَنْ تُقْطَعَ الْأَرْحَامُ. This to me is one of the clear prophetic miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. Because I believe that the atbaq, and you know in Algeria, what do they call the dish? Tabaq. They call the satellite dish in North Africa atbaq. And that is a correct ta'rib. In the East they call them suhoon or dishat. They call them suhoon, and that's an incorrect hadith because a sahan is a flat dish. The tabaq is a concave dish. And so atbaq is the correct meaning. And the Prophet used the very word that's used for satellite communications, muwasalat. He said, tuwasal al-atbaq, that the dishes will be communicating continuously and people will sever their family ties. In other words, people will stay home and watch television on satellite dish and they won't go visit their neighbors. This is an amazing hadith to me. Ya Ibn Mas'ud, من أعلام الساعة وأشراطها أن يسود كل قبيلة منافقوها. You will see hypocrites ruling. وكل سوق فجاروها. And you will see the worst people controlling the marketplaces. يا ابن مسعود إن من أعلام الساعة وأشراطها أن تزخرف المحاريب وأن تخرب القلوب. That you will have ornamented mosques, but the hearts would be ugly. They'll be derelict, bereft. So people praying in the mosque, they've done no tazkiyah, but the mosque is beautiful. يا ابن مسعود إن من علامة الساعة وأشراطها أن يكون المؤمن في القبيلة أذل من النقد. The mu'min will be more humiliated than the ugly goat. Like nothing. يا ابن مسعود إن من علامة الساعة وأشراطها أن يكتفي الرجال بالرجال وَالنِّسَاءُ بِالنِّسَاءِ. You will see homosexuality and lesbianism widespread. Wake up, people. This is our Prophet speaking. And he said, you will see Mirk al-Subyan, young people having massive wealth. Like Zuckerberg is a multi-billionaire before he was 30. And you will see Mu'amaratun Nisa. You'll see these movements to corrupt the women. يا ابن مسعود إن من أشراط الساعة وأعلامها أن يعمر خراب الدنيا ويخرب عمرانها or عمرانها. You will see the destruction of civilization. You will see the civilization of the destruction of the world. So, خراب الدنيا, that will become the ta'mir. It's tadmir. People will, like blowing up mosques. This is the khilafah. The Abbasids built those mosques, and now the new khilafah, quote unquote, is blowing them up. So you're seeing the Umran of Kharab. This is their civilization. This is what they have to offer. And you will see the destruction of real civilization. يا ابن مسعود إن من علامة الساعة وأشراطها أن تظهر المعازف. That musical instruments will be widespread, and alcohol and drums. يا ابن مسعود إن من علامة الساعة وأشراط. He said that من أشارة الشرط, you'll see many police, and also al-ghammazun, al-lammazun, people mocking and making fun. Now look at all the TV shows where they just mock people. يا ابن مسعود إن من علامة الساعة وأشراطها أن يكثر أولاد الزنا. You will see many children born out of wedlock. In my country now, over 50%. Amazing. تعرض الفتن على القلوب كالحصير. Now I want to interpret this hadith. Hasir is a mattress, or a mat. It's a matrix. It's like this. It has vertical and horizontal, and it's a mat. And the Prophet said that the fitan will be shown to the hearts like a mat. Udan, udan. Ya Allah, sadaqa Rasulullah. He said their hair would be like the Bactrian camel's hair. This is not a camel the Arabs had. They came from Persia, so they saw them. They knew what they were. These people will not enter paradise. And here's the Bactrian camel. Wallahi, say sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. He said people will drink intoxicants from my ummah and call it by other names. Right? They'll have lots of names for it. يُعْزَفُ عَلَى رُؤُسِهِمْ بِالْمَعَازِفِ. Musical instruments will be on their heads. How did he know about that? That's what it says. I didn't make that up. It says they'll have ma'azif, ala ru'usihim ma'azif. On their heads are musical instruments. Who would have thought that, who would have known what that meant at the time of our Prophet ﷺ? But now we see it, all these people everywhere. And here's the iPod. You know, it's not I am a pod. You know, a pod is you know, you have invasion of the body snatchers. They take over your body. A pod takes over your body. They took out the verb to be. They just say iPod. Because you're not being anymore. You're a shadow of your former self. Your mind is filled with their thoughts. You're not even yourself anymore. You're listening to Rihanna or Madonna or Haifa Wahbi or whoever the latest fashionable singer is. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم